Take all we got, we gon' make it. Show the world that I shine in our greatness. Keep it real, never gon' fake this. Till we make it, till we make it. Taking off, flying high like a spaceship. Take control, take a shot.
All right, welcome back, everybody. This is Danny with Shake the Earth podcast. Got a special guest, Landon.
Yes, Landon.
Landon is the creative director of Wink Naturals and wears many hats at that company, which is also, by coincidence, the company that I started.
No way.
And today, we're going to go over some questions. Tell us how we got these questions.
Yeah, so we're kind of at the beginning of this whole podcast concept right now, and we're having a lot of fun with it, and already we're seeing really good response from people.
I have been blown away.
Yeah.
Like, blown away at the feedback, screen grabs, testimonials. Like, people love it.
Yeah, people are really digging it. I mean, I think it's filling a need that people have for this kind of thing in their lives. And so those same people, a lot of them have come to us saying, hey, I want to know more about Danny's perspective on things. They really like to see the people you're interviewing and kind of see those success stories. But you're a success story in and of yourself. And so these people want to know your input on some specific questions that they had. So we pulled these questions together for Danny, and I
felt uncomfortable
yes.
going on alone. So I asked Landon to come on and kind of just, Landon's really good about teasing questions and like getting I guess getting a good response out of it. And so a lot of the questions and the way we're asking our guests is Landon kind of doing that homework. And so he gets a lot of credit. So I asked him to come on with me today. We got some questions from a handful of our customers and people that know me or know Wink Naturals or one of the companies that I'm familiar with. And so we put those down to paper, and they're really good questions.
There are some really, really good ones here.
Really
some
good
that
questions.
I actually am curious to see what the answers are.
So am I. I'm kidding. So I've been looking at these for the last few days. And so this episode will probably be a little bit shorter. We're going to go into some of these questions. And Landon, why don't you ask them to me?
Yeah.
And then I'll reiterate some of them or clarify what I understand the questions to be. But maybe start with my background. Do you want me to start with the background a little bit?
Totally. Tell people how did you get to where you are right now?
Okay. So in 2008, I was in college, and my brother-in-law, Zach Zarbach, had an idea, great idea, and it's still a great idea for a company that would basically be a cough syrup company. It started out really random, but he's a bright doctor, really, really smart guy, and he saw this need in the market for a better, safer cough syrup. And neither of us really knew what we were doing, but what I look back and kind of label it as being we were pretty resilient. And so we put some money together with another gentleman, and in 2008 we launched a company called Zarbee's. And Zarbee's went from a really small idea where we were meeting in a local library here in Utah to when I left in 2014, we were in 60,000 stores across the United States. And it just kind of grew. And of course, there were no problems, and it was really easy, and safe sailing the whole time. I'm kidding. It was a ton of work. But we were so naive, we didn't really realize the work that needed to go into building a consumer packaged brand.
Well, that's a question. If you knew going in exactly everything that it was going to take, I mean, is there anything you would have done differently?
I probably wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
That's part of I think the beauty of going into something naive and ill prepared. I always tell people now, just with this company Wink that I started in 2015, I was more educated going into it, but I was still naive because we were doing something a little bit different.
Yeah.
We were going online only. We didn't really realize. I didn't realize all the nuances and all the things that I didn't know about an online business. But again, if you're naive and you're resilient, I think you can do some pretty amazing things.
Yeah.
But we always we joked about it. Had we known how hard it was going to be to get product onto to retail shelves, how hard is it to walk in and talk to Walgreens and Walmart? A funny story is we were trying to forecast. Okay, we were in 13 stores here in Utah, and we were trying to forecast how many bottles of cough syrup we would sell a day. Okay.
Okay.
So we would go and walk these aisles, and we'd be like, okay, Here's a good guess. Maybe we think it would be 10 to 50 bottles a day, right? There's a lot of people that get coughs and sore throats. Well, when we actually looked at sell-through data, it was like, you're lucky if you're selling 2 bottles a week.
Oh.
Right? So those types of things where you just don't know. Like, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's part of my background. I started that company. We took on some investment money, private equity money, a significant amount, and then shortly thereafter, realized I wanted to do something again. I wanted to have a little bit more control over the customer experience, and then also the management experience, because whenever you take on investors, you lose some of that autonomy,
that control,
and it just kind of changed a little bit, changed more than I wanted to, and in 2014 decided to depart Zarbee's, and quickly thereafter started Wink Naturals. At the time, it was the Natural Sleep Company, and had that going. And then I thought, you know what, there's more than just sleep products. And so we quickly changed the name. And ever since then, I have been managing that company. We're 15 employees, full-time employees. We've got almost 1,000 independent sellers, who we call venture members. These are customers who love the products. They can sign up to be a seller. They receive their own compensation for representing Wink. We're pretty selective on who we let join. We want to have really, really great people, really great representation.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, maybe in my life, I've always thought of entrepreneurship as the only path for me. You know, I remember my parents saying, "Your 2 brothers are attorneys. Are you sure you don't want to be an attorney?" And I'm like, first off, I would be a horrible attorney. You wouldn't want me being your attorney. And then the other realization is that I'm a bad employee. Like,
well, so that's the thing, because you started Zarbee straight out of college,
right?
So you never had like that. I don't know what that is. That experience a lot of people coming out of college have, where like trying to lock down that first job.
Yeah.
Not that it wasn't a job, but it's like almost. I don't know. It's there's like a flip side to that for a lot of people.
Yeah. What was happening? You got to figure this is in 2008. Like this is there's a depression. There's a recession. I was just about to graduate, and there are I'm seeing friends of mine, classmates of mine getting hired and fired within a couple months. Jeez. And I always kind of knew that I wanted to own my own business, but it was like the perfect timing in a worst case scenario, because what we didn't know is that recession in the mid 2007, 2008 was causing big retailers to also react. And we didn't even think of that as well. So what they were doing is they were SKU rationalizing. So they were limiting the number of SKUs they were carrying. We didn't know that. Had we known that, we would have never started Zarbee's.
Yeah.
So it took us a solid 1.5 to 2 years to really get into Walgreens. And then, there were 2 or 3 times where we'd get in and they'd cut us out without notice because they weren't ready, or we weren't ready, they thought. And so really I never had a job coming out of college, like you say. Like, I went straight into starting this first company. And I figure my wife was working full time, bless her heart. We had just had a baby. We had no money. We had a little bit of school debt, and we thought, if there was a time to take a risk, right? There's really no perfect time to take a risk.
That's true.
If there's a time, this would be a great time, because what else do I have to lose? Like, I'm pretty at the bottom anyways.
Okay, so you alluded to this a little bit on the Baby Bling episode.
Yeah.
But you were talking about being in
Which
retail.
Is a great episode, by the way.
Go listen to it. You were talking about being in retail in these meetings with these retail giants like Walmart. I mean, how does that go?
Yeah.
Like, how do you even prepare for something like that?
Got to give a shout out to brokers. Brokers, if you're considering creating a retail product, Chad Bugos, Brandon Warren, stellar brokers for Walmart. Like,
how did you get connected with them?
So we had just signed on a master broker, which is basically to say we had a full-time sales guy who would go out and manage. So the way retailers work is, if you think that you have a great product, you can't just go in and walk into Walmart. They're not going to listen to you.
Okay.
Like, they want to see data, they want to see track record, they want to see that you have a chance at succeeding, because you have to look at their stores as real estate. And real estate is extremely expensive at Walmart. it's highly valuable, right? So you have to have a good broker. And so we had a great master broker, David Birnbaum, and then we also had, through that connection, we also found Chad and Brandon, who are stellar guys, and they're extremely hardworking. And so they were able to give us the best opportunity to meet with those brokers. Now, Chad was a former buyer at Walmart. So he knew the ins and outs of how to do that. And so again, you don't really know that until you actually have to go through it. And that was 2.5 years into us being in business.
Yeah.
And so it's difficult to get products into retail. And the whole landscape with consumer goods is changing. Online is impacting, Amazon buying Whole Foods. That has implications at retail.
Isn't it Prime Day today, or is that tomorrow?
I think it's this next week. Actually, I think it is.
So that's already creeping into everything that they own. Whole Foods is going to be doing Amazon Prime deals.
Absolutely. And so having a good broker gives you the best opportunity to get a product on shelf. And that's what happened. And ultimately what happened is you get kind of this domino effect. With Zarbee's. We saw that. We got into some regional retailers, had some good sell through. You hit your benchmarks and your hurdle rates, what they call them, meaning you're moving a certain number of units per store per week, regionally or nationwide.
Okay.
And then we had Walgreens, we had Target, we had CVS, and then Walmart and Costco ultimately.
And they pay attention to each other, right?
Absolutely.
So you get into
they all see the same data,
and they're looking to see how is it doing in this.
The last thing that Walmart wants is customers coming in looking for Zarbee's, for example, and not being able to find it, but Target has it.
Right.
Yeah. Or Kroger has it. And so they're always constantly looking at a lot of the same data, a lot of the same reports, industry reports, whatnot. And so it's really, you're having to battle against not only creating great product, creating a great marketing plan, executing on it, and then also showing that you can sell through product at a national scale. And that took a lot of effort and a lot of money.
Yeah. That's crazy. So that's an experience I don't feel like a lot of people are even trying to have anymore. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people are just trying to do the online thing now.
Yeah. And here's the great thing about online is you don't have to go through all those hoops, right? You can have a great product, you can have great customer service, and you can offer that all online. And that's really what Wink Naturals is. I saw all those learnings, all that experience of going through retail, and a lot of disappointment because sometimes you're in there and you're like, are we doing well? Are we not doing well? You're waiting for meetings. It's like, these buyers are meeting up one time a year. So if you don't make the cut that time, you got to wait a whole another year.
Jeez.
And so it's like cough cold season. Our products were cough cold based, and the buying time is actually right now. They're buying right now for fall and winter. And so with online, you don't have those limitations and constrictions on timing, on acceptability, on approval. You can create a good product, surround it with great customer service, and then be online and selling really quickly.
So one other question I have before we move on to some of the questions we have here is if you're talking to somebody who's looking to start their own business selling things online, but they're really just working out of their own basement, kind of like you started out. What's the first step for those people? Like, should they be starting an Etsy shop? Should they be starting a Shopify?
Great question. So you allude to the point that when I left Zarbee's, I had a little bit of liquidity, meaning I was able to sell my shares and walk away and have some seed money for the next project, which was Wink. So I had that. That's a huge benefit. A lot of people may not have that. You don't need it, to be honest. You don't need it.
Right.
You can cash flow pretty quickly with some of the tools. I have told this to everybody. A lot of young men, young women will approach me and say, "Hey, I want to do what you do. How do?" In fact, just yesterday, someone approached me and said, "How'd you do it?" And that's a really, really easy question to ask with a ton of complex answers, depending on how deep you go. But if I were to tell anybody, and this is what I tell them, now more than any time in the history of the world, you got to think about this. What the internet has done and what very, very smart people have done, developers, engineers have done to equalize and make opportunity for everyone. Okay. Basically, if you have one of these, if you have a phone, you can start a business.
Yeah.
What I would do if somebody's asking, hey, I want to do this. I have this product. I have this gizmo that I think would respond well. Mm-hmm. Go start a Shopify site or something like it. I like Shopify.
Yeah.
Go get a PayPal account. Go get a Square Stripe account, your payment processor. You can go on to Fiverr and get some graphics made really quickly. Okay. If it's a product, if it's a physical product, get your manufacturing done. Get 100 units of whatever you want to sell. Okay. You can throw together, I know this because I did it. You can throw together a website in a weekend and have your first sale by Sunday if you do it right.
That's crazy.
That's what's crazy about like being equal. So people that say, I don't have any opportunities or I don't know what to do, it's really because they're not trying hard. Not that I don't feel bad for people, because some people really are coming from difficult backgrounds.
Sure, yeah.
But if you really are eager and you're willing to be resilient and put in the time and effort, there are so many tools. It used to be that where you had to spend $5-10 grand to get a website.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
A couple years ago. You can go on a Shopify for $150, buy a nice template, upload some great photos, get your telephone number from like Call 8 or Grasshopper or something like that, and you can be up. I bet we should probably do that.
Yeah.
We should show how inexpensive it is, start to finish with a product.
Oh,
and be
that
online.
would be really interesting.
And actually document the whole thing. I'm confident you can do it for less than a couple $100. Now, it's not factoring in like your product or whatever it is you're going to be selling. But I tell people, get 100 units of whatever it is. If it's an ebook, great. If it's a cough syrup, great. If it's a pencil, if it's a phone cover, get 100 units of it. Because I've always believed this as well. If you can move 100 units, you can move 1,000. If you can move 1,000, you can move 10. I believe that.
Yeah.
And that's how I operate with all of our products now. And you know that, you're familiar with how we do things.
That's I don't know. I think that's really cool because with your experience with manufacturing and that sort of thing, I don't know. I feel like that kind of did give you another leg up as well, because somebody who's not familiar with how to even get their product made. Yeah. They're probably calling up Acme or Whammo or whatever those guys are, the inventor company.
Invent help.
Invent help.
Give their good ideas away to people. Don't do that.
So that's, that's all another thing we can talk about maybe some other time.
The whole manufacturing side, I kind of briefly went over that, but from when I left Zarbee's to when I started Wink, I had already had 2 or 3 formulas done. Right after I left. And so we were able to basically go from, I took a couple months off to where we were launching with product like really quickly. So the formulation side, I'm not a chemist. I want to make that clear. People ask me, am I a chemist? No, I'm not. Am I a doctor? No, I'm not. But I'm scrappy enough to find the right people. And we've been really fortunate to find really, really good manufacturing partners. That's awesome. Another thing. But.
Man, that's crazy. All right,
Should we
guys,
jump into some of these questions?
Yeah, we're gonna have to go more in depth on that story. We're just gonna tease you guys with that at a future point if you want to know more about that, because there's a lot to know. Is it kind of crazy that you're acting as the host now? That's what you are. It's a little weird. I'm like, I think we're gonna have Landon host and co-host more because he's super, super good. And by the way, we're going to have him on the podcast where I'm hosting and asking him questions. Someday, and then because you'll never know what to expect ever again from another episode. Well, that's kind of how we do things, though. We keep people on their toes. Landon has a really, really cool story as well. We'll go into depth one day. Oh man! Should we go, Juliana Hernandez? Yeah, let's see, Juliana. Juliana Hernandez asks, "How do you overcome people's?" And then she has in quotes family negative comments about doing something. And I assume it's like just maybe a venture or like anything, right? Yeah, or some project that maybe like you're making something risky, or like starting Zarbee's. Yeah. So I have a really cool. I have a story that I think on about that. I have the type of personality where maybe this is not a good thing, but I love it when people doubt me, and maybe it's because I just need a little bit of a chip on my shoulder. Sure. To do things. Yeah. And again, that may not be a good thing because I'm always like on the Enneagram, there's a test you can take and I'm the challenger. I like being challenged. Okay. So a lot of it depends on your personality. I think for Juliana, how I would answer that would be,
in my situation, I had a very good friend of mine, and I think I said this on the Baby Bling podcast, I think, that I had a good friend, and I was telling him when I was starting Zarbee's, right as we were beginning, I was like, hey, we're going to create this product. We're going to get it into the stores. It's going to be a cough syrup. And his dad, I was with his dad, him and his dad. And his dad like looks at me and he's like, what makes you think that you can do this? Again, he's like seeing the economy going to crap. Like it's 2008.
You were young.
I was young. I was 24.
Yeah.
You know, like super young, super inexperienced. In college still. I had no reason to be doing what we were going to do. And so I can't blame him. I really don't blame him. But what I did is that night I went and wrote what he said to me on a Post-it note, and I still have it. And I use it as motivation. I like that. It's not a negative thing. I don't have any negative feelings towards people like that. No, not at all. But I try to turn it into, I'm confident in what I can do.
Yeah.
I'm confident in me being able to know that I have strengths and I have weaknesses. And being able to have the right team. And for example, with Zarbee's and with Wink, it was being able to be resilient enough to get through and have little breakthroughs. And so if you have a family member who's negative, I would just say this: back up what you say with your actions. Even if you fail.
Yeah.
Like oftentimes, like here, I've only talked about some of the good things like Zarbee's and Wink. I've had some bad business ideas that have gone, I've lost money as well. But one thing that I won't be blamed for is not working hard and being resilient towards something. And so if somebody has negative comments, explain to them why it's important to you, and then go out and do the work. You know, there's really nothing that they can say more to you if you show them that you're dedicated to it and you're working hard towards whatever goal that might be. Maybe you want to go back to school. Maybe you want to start your own business. Maybe you want to change your careers midstream. Maybe you want to take 6 months off in your life and go do something worthwhile. Really, at the end of the day, you're making that decision, and depending how you act and how you move forward is really your reaction.
Yeah.
So
I like that. That can be tough when family doesn't.
It is.
Want to support
it
you.
is. I remember my mom and dad were they were stressed out when I told them I was going to start my first business. Are you sure you don't want to go to law school? Yeah, I don't. I really don't want to do that. And here's why. And here's why it's important to me. And obviously my parents are super supportive. Yeah. They're extremely supportive. But they had questions on, is this going to be something good for Danny and his wife and his small family?
And there's always that fine line of like somebody being concerned for your well-being and somebody trying to stop you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so you got to determine those too.
Yeah.
Some people are going to be more negative towards you because maybe they're jealous. Maybe you're doing something they want to do. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, but that's a good question. And you're always going to have people trying to persuade you or dissuade you from doing something that is worthwhile. And to that, I would say, make your actions speak louder and be the response.
Yeah, man, I like that.
So,
should we move to Jesse's here?
Yeah.
Jesse Lundberg asking best tips for how you manage a successful business and a happy home life. Is Wink always on your and your wife's minds and always a topic of conversation? What do you think? It's kind of a longer one. What do you think is a sufficient amount of time focusing on business in order to have time to balance out your life? Make sure you aren't neglecting other important things. Do you feel like it's good to take time away or to be 100% in all the time?
So Jesse, you asked a lot of questions in this, and so I'm going to try to break this down for you. Best tip on how you manage a successful business and happy home life. It's not always happy. I think that's the reality of it. There's a lot of stress. There's there is always a lot of stress when you start a business. And I can only speak to that because that's all I've done. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a dentist. I'm not an attorney. Yeah. I don't do your job. And so just speaking from starting a business, growing a business, and doing it a couple times, having some investments elsewhere that just require time and energy. Great. That's a great question, though. Like, best tips for how you manage a successful business and a happy home life. There are times where, I guess for me, you never really disconnect. It's kind of always on your mind. We find ways to distract each other, distract our family from the business, and kind of remove ourselves. You know, last week we were in California. Yeah. still doing work, right? But that's the life that I chose. And I knew what I was signing up for when I decided to do that and jump all into it. And so I don't blame anybody. And in fact, I love that. Because again, like I said at the beginning, I make a bad employee. Like I make a horrible employee. So manage successful home life and happy business. I just don't know that there's a magic bullet to it, though.
Yeah.
There's always something with the business.
Yeah.
There's always something. There's going to be times where I come in at 6 in the morning and I stay till 6 at night, 8 at night. Or there's going to be times where I come in at 10 because my daughter has a soccer match, and I leave at 8. There's going to be times when I leave the office at 4 and then I'm back on the computer working at 10 o'clock at night. But that's what I love. I love that. And so what I've tried to do this go around with Wink Naturals is really set up some more boundaries. So some days, like last night, I was here at the office late, so I left my computer here at the office, and I didn't take it home. I didn't give myself that temptation.
Yeah.
And so that's a little bit about how you do it. You have to just find out what works. There's going to be sacrifices. It's always easier when you have a partner who understands that. My wife does. She's always been really supportive. I think that finding the balance is really difficult. You're always going to be neglecting something, though.
Yeah.
And that's the reality. You're going to be neglecting something.
I feel like I think it was a Mitt Romney quote that I heard once where he was kind of saying, if you, for him at least, if he felt like he wasn't quite keeping up with his family, his business, and other obligations he had, he kind of felt like that was as balanced as he could be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was kind of,
yeah. And that's a great point. I want to read that quote, but what I have found, there's ebbs and flows, and like, there's times where you're doing really good with your family. And there's times where you're doing really good, and I call it flow, like with work, like when you're just working and you're getting things done. But I'm not with my family, right? So you're going to be constantly going back and forth into these boxes where things need attention. When you have a business, or when you start a business especially, it just requires a lot more effort to get momentum.
It's like one of those fire triangles. They say what a fire needs, and the oxygen, the fuel, and the heat. And then,
they're always kind of
everything's
ebb and
pulling
flowing.
you. Yeah.
They're all flowing.
Yeah.
So that's a great question. I don't know that I answered that super great. My wife at times would probably tell you that I don't do super great at it. I tend to get hyper-focused on certain things, and then that I kind of bounce around. So I could tell you this, that starting a business is a lot easier than growing a business. There's probably thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that start businesses all the time.
Oh yeah.
Growing a business is a completely different thing. You have to start, managing inventory and managing employees and managing growth, or managing lulls in your business, whatever it might be. And that's where really I think people get.
It's not as exciting sometimes.
No, it's scary. That's where I've always mentioned this before, because I read this in Inc. magazine, but the imagery of riding a tiger, like you're riding a tiger and people think, wow, that's awesome. This guy's so brave and courageous. He's riding a tiger. And the guy riding a tiger is thinking, holy crap, this thing's going to turn around and kill me at any minute. And it's going to leave me bankrupt, or it's going to leave me without money. It's going to leave me without relationships. And so that's kind of how it is. That kind of imagery is always in my head. And it's funny enough, we have a tiger mural in our office, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You need to paint someone riding it on top. Okay, that's great. Jesse, thanks for that one. Mallory Buxton here. She's asking, how do you overcome self-doubt? Or question. How do you find or develop the confidence to go after your dreams and desires career-wise? What do you need in place beforehand? Which I think that's an interesting little thing to
I want to answer the last question first, because I think that in chronological order, that's how I would approach it. I think you have to have, for me, you have to have a clear vision of at least what you want to be. And it doesn't need to be crystal clear, but it needs to be clear enough to where every day you can remind yourself why you're doing what you're doing. I think most people, this is my opinion, I think most people quit or stop or get discouraged because they lose the vision and the emotional high of that feeling that they had when they maybe had that idea of starting a clothing line, or they had that idea of starting a branding company or an advertising agency, whatever it might be, they lose that emotion. And so they lose that vision. And so for me, leaving Zarbee's, I had the idea for Wink Naturals in 2011, 3 years before I left Zarbee's. I remember clearly I had it on a flight back from New York City. I wrote it down. And that, to me, what do you need in place beforehand is an idea. So I had the idea years before I actually executed on that idea. Have a clear vision of what you want to become or what you want to be doing, and write it down. I tell everybody this, I carry this book or something like it at all times everywhere. And it's beat up and it's ugly. And this is if Mallory's looking at like, how does she want to be confident in her dreams, write down all those dreams.
Yeah.
Write them down.
Yeah.
You're 43% more likely to accomplish things when you write them down. Not type them, not put them in your phone, not type them on a computer, physically write them down.
Tangible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I would say have that clear. And then how do you overcome self-doubt? 100% of people, and I'm going to say this again, 100% of people at some point, probably every day, have self-doubt. Right? Meaning they're discouraged. They question why they're doing it. Is it worth it? That's a big one. And I'll tell you, I still have those. But what I tell a lot of our sellers in my business now is your why has to be bigger than your daily challenges. So I strongly believe that. And whatever that might be, it might be you trying to get into dental school or physical therapy school, or trying to get another job that pays you a little bit more, or you're recently divorced and you're struggling. What's your why? Everybody has a why.
Yeah.
Is it bigger than that, that medical bill or that house payment or that car payment?
Yeah.
Yes. And then that'll take you to the next trial and next obstacle.
Staying centered that way.
Yeah. You constantly have to remind yourself and remember what your purpose is and what your why is. That's really
that repetition. A lot of life comes down to that kind of repetition. Like, can you actually do something over and over in a consistent manner?
Yeah.
And like,
despite setbacks.
Yeah.
Despite setbacks.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was a great one, Mallory. Okay. Let's see here. Gabby Lynn. She's asking, when you're in a funk or having a bad day, what do you do to get out of it? That kind of ties into what we were just talking about.
Yeah, that ties into that. And one thing I might add is everybody should have an outlet, a healthy outlet, a healthy coping mechanism. I remember I told the story to some of our sellers in a more intimate setting. I'll share it today. But when I was at Zarbee's, we were not in Walgreens yet. And we were told that we would be in. And what that meant was us going from a small company to a growing small company and a growing fast small company. And then abruptly, before they were going to put in the purchase orders to us, pulled the plug and basically said, sorry, we can't. We're SKU rationalizing. We're cutting SKUs, and we're sorry we can't do it. And that was it. And so you go from this incredible high to this incredible sorrow and like depression. And I remember coming home and I literally cried. Like I cried my eyes out because I knew what it meant. It meant we missed that cutoff. We got to wait another year. We got to somehow, my wife and I really weren't taking salary. We put a bunch of credit card debt on our card for marketing expenses and, a young baby, a 9-month-old. And so you want to talk about like having to being depressed and being in a funk.
Yeah.
I understand that. What I do now, I cope differently now. I love the outdoors. I love archery. I love spending time with my kids. I try to step away and just really put things in perspective for myself. Is it really going to be detrimental to the business? Is it going to be detrimental to my life, to my family? Or is it just perceived that it is? And so that's how I
So yeah, like activities like archery, I think honestly for some people fishing kind of falls into the same kind of thing, but it's something where you can very easily slip into flow. And then just kind of ideas will come to you, or you'll just feel rejuvenated.
Archery has been that for me. Like I love fishing, I love hunting, but archery forces me every time I pull back an arrow. And this might sound corny, but everybody should have something like this that they can go to. Every time I pull back an arrow, the only thing that I'm focusing on is that target. That's it. And so with my mind that's always racing like 1,000,000 miles a second, like it makes me slow down. So I've made it a goal for this year, and I do pretty well for the most part, to shoot my bow every single night. And whether it's 5 minutes or 30 minutes, I do that. And that's just what works for me. And it makes me feel better. It calms me down.
Yeah.
Obviously with running a growing business, it is extremely stressful. So, and you're going to have funk days. I think Ethan and Megan Faulkner, Brown, when they came in on our podcast, they talked about how they look at their 7 days. If they had 2 good days of 7 days and they had 5 bad days, that's a win.
Yeah,
for entrepreneurs, you're happy with that.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one way to look at it as well.
That's interesting. Jenna Hayes. Gabby, thanks for that one. That was great. Jenna Hayes asking, do you ever find yourself comparing the success of Wink Naturals with other companies? I struggle personally with comparing myself to others, so it's hard to stop. Any advice?
Oh man, I think, what is it? Comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think just an anecdote from my life. I remember reading Inc. magazine every single episode or every single
issue.
Yeah, in college, until one day I noticed that I was like, I'm reading about other people's dreams and how they're executing on their dreams. And I also found like, wow, that guy's lucky. You know, he's lucky. He's got this or he's got that. And then you realize, it's not luck. This guy probably worked really hard. And so I try not to compare myself to people I don't really, I don't. And what I do now is I completely changed that. I love seeing people succeed because what it does is it says, you know what, if they can do it, I could probably do it.
Yeah.
And their success doesn't diminish my success at all.
It's not a zero sum.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's not. Because they're successful doesn't make me unsuccessful. And so what I rather do now and what I do now is, and part of this podcast is like having people on who impress me.
Oh, yeah.
Like I'm constantly learning about people who impress me. I'm especially attracted to people who do things that are extremely difficult for a long amount of time, a prolonged amount of time. That's why I think like Sweet Tooth Fairy story is awesome. Baby Bling story is awesome. Even Zarby's story is awesome because it took us a while. And so I would say this, Jenna, like if you're comparing yourself to others, you're using up bandwidth and resources and energy instead of building your success. And if you're going to look at somebody else, I would strongly suggest look at that person in the light of what can I learn from them? What can I take away from their success in terms of how can I apply it to my life?
Now,
To me, that's you're much more happy doing it that way as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's funny though how other people's success when it's not something you're interested in doing isn't as bothersome sometimes. You know, I don't look at the New York Yankees winning the World Series and go like, gosh, dang it, I could have done that.
But maybe another video editor or video.
But
production.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Something that's closer to home. Those are harder, even though they're smaller things. Yeah. It's not like you watch the Olympics and wish that you were winning that gold medal.
Yeah.
But there are some things but they're small things. But for some reason, the small things can be so much harder in that way. And I don't really know what the best approach is for that. But
yeah, I think it's because I think it's a really good point. We probably project ourselves onto other people as well. Right. That's a good point. Like what I would do in that situation is for sure find the person that is doing what you want to do.
Yeah.
And ask them for help.
Yeah.
Like ask them for advice. You'd be surprised at how many people want to help. And instead of sitting there festering in jealousy or like, self-pity, you're really not doing anything good for yourself. You might as well ask that person, hey, I'm impressed with you because of this, this, and this. What would you give a tip for me?
Yeah.
And I've done that for a long time. Of course, there are times where I'm like, man, mostly with like competition now, like for Wink Naturals, like I'll see brands. And I'm like, wow, that brand's growing really fast. Here's some of the things that they're doing, or here are some of the things that I think we could do better. And kind of use it as kind of strategic fuel as well. Maybe not jealousy, but like, okay, yeah, it pushes you.
Yeah.
And so don't let the jealousy or the comparison smash you, but let it push you into the right direction.
Yeah.
And ask for help. Like seriously, ask for help. People will help you.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Good question.
People are flattered when you
For
Even
sure.
people you think that get that kind of attention all the time.
For sure.
Yeah. Let's see. Last one here that we have for today. Cinda Green. Oh, Jenna Hayes, thank you. That was awesome. Cinda Green's asking, I think a good something to cover would be time blocking or time management and accountability when you really have no one holding you accountable but yourself.
Yeah. I read a book on a flight down to Peru. My family's from Peru. We're going down there visit. And in the book, I don't want to butcher this story, but the takeaway from me was burning your ships. Right?
Okay. Cross the Rubicon, kind of like you're committed now.
Like when you have something to lose, and I firmly believe this, desperation leads to success. It could also lead to bad decision making. However, for the most part, if you've got a good focus and you've got a good purpose, desperation can lead to success. And for me, and every time I've started a business or invested in something, I put myself in that desperate situation where it has to work. If it doesn't work, it could be detrimental. With Zarbee's, it was desperation. Like it was absolute desperation. We had to make it work. And so that goes back to how do you manage your time? Well, if it's important to you and you're prioritizing it and you're desperate to make it work and you're willing to do anything that is legal to make it work, right? If you're willing to do that, you can do some pretty incredible things. I've read, wilderness survival stories where individuals have done things that they never thought possible. One of my favorite books is The Hatchet. Right?
That's what I was thinking of.
Right, we were talking
Gary
about
Paulson.
that as well. Yeah. And there are real stories. That's a fictional book, but there are real versions of that. And when you are desperate to make an idea work, to make your business work, to make your diet work, your health, whatever it might be, a relationship work, when you're desperate, it will lead to success. More so than if you have nothing to lose. If you have so much money or resource or time, chances are you're never going to get to the point where you're dedicating enough, what I call TEF, time, energy, and focus. And when I started Wink, I was pulled in a bunch of different directions. I had some consulting opportunities. I had some other businesses. People want to start businesses. And I counted out one day and it was like, there's like 8 or 9 different directions I can go. And my wife sat me down. She's like, you got to pick 3.
Yeah.
And so we honed it down to 3. And then from there, it's really Wink is my number one. Like every single day, I'm concerned about Wink Naturals. That's where time, energy, and focus is going for me.
So it's priorities.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
When you have your priorities straight.
Yeah. And then the way you approach those priorities, like if you're approaching them with, it has to work, you have to make it work. You have to get that 100 products, right? If we're going back to our website, you've got, let's say $500 invested in a website and tools and whatever, you're going to test your idea. You have to put everything into it. So,
man, Cinda Green, thank you. That was a great one. Guys, that's all we're doing for this episode.
That's it.
But there were more. There were more that we got. We're kind of saving some for later, but we would love it if you guys would send us your questions right now. It's the best way for them to do that right now. I'm trying to think.
Send Landon an email. Just send Landon an email. Landon@winknaturals.com. We'll just use your email.
Okay, we'll do that.
Landon@winknaturals.com. And again, this podcast really isn't tied to Wink.
No.
It's more a platform to help educate, train, encourage people to do great things and shake the earth. We're going to have Sid Smith next week, right? So Sid, I want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, tease
it. Sid is a good buddy of mine. He's a double amputee. The dude, if anybody has excuses to not do great things, Sid could find those excuses. But he sees them and he goes straight through them. He's a double amputee. He does triathlons. He does races. And he's a total inspiration when you look at what he's done. Like, it's incredible. It's incredible what he's done. So he's going to come on. He's going to talk about that. And you want to talk about like finding the momentum and finding encouragement or your purpose. Like you got to listen to Sid.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm excited to hear from him. So that's gonna be really good.
All right. Well, we appreciate you taking the time. Hopefully this was useful. It was kind of weird. I was on the other side today. You did a good job, Landon.
Just flipped it around.
We'll do these occasionally as we get questions in from you. And if you enjoy this podcast and can do us a favor, that would be awesome if you could leave us a review on iTunes and Google Play. Check us out and share us.